An ice climber just died here Wednesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And a number of, not to go totally away from parkour, but
No, go totally away from it.
COVID, because of lockdown and people trying to social distance, brought a lot of people to the outdoors that hadn't been going to the outdoors. And if it's not my outdoors, like if you want access to it, you've got every bit of the right I do. That being said, they saw a huge surge in search and rescue need because a lot of people were going out who didn't have the knowledge necessarily that they needed to do it and be safe.
Yeah.
And so it's been a super hard time for all of the rescue teams. And again, they're all volunteer because they have to social distance. They have to take all these extra precautions on rescues. Plus, they're getting way more calls than they ever have.
Oh, my God. I feel like, let's
It's
lighten the regulations on some of these guys, maybe.
Right. It's been a perfect storm. And even, there were a couple guys who had their rescue gear in their trucks and it was stolen out of their trucks and they buy all their own gear even.
Oh, my God.
So anything we can do to help that community out, we've been they literally saved our lives. So
yeah. Jesus. Well, yeah, we'll put that in the description too. That for sure. We'll link to what those guys are doing because, there's been crazy amounts of people out in the wilderness now.
Yeah.
And it's not clear that everyone's got the experience. I mean, I'm really fortunate. My dad's a pretty wild man.
Yeah.
And so he's taken me into some situations and taught me more than I realized I actually knew until I started, going mountaineering and just camping and things with friends and realizing that I had a different understanding of nature. Not that I'm the shit. I'm I got to be careful. I don't go too far off the beaten path. But I'm just okay, I can go in camp and know what I want, know what I need to bring and whatever. And yeah. My dad took me up Long's Peak once and
really?
We did a snow cave in
Nice.
Chasm Lake on that, and that was probably the most intense thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And that's again the nature will harden you motherfucker.
Yeah. It doesn't care.
Nature will not give a shit. I mean I can't sympathize exactly because I don't it wasn't a blizzard or anything, but I just imagine how exhausted I was even just climbing up. And then I remember when I walked back from that trip, I was just first of all, when we got to the top of the mountain, that was the hardest core sleep I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
Because I was so ridiculously exhausted. It was one of these things where it became an eternal event. It felt like I just blinked, but it felt like I blinked and in that blink, a million years had passed. Yeah. It was a weird timeless thing that happened where I just woke up, but it also felt like I was dead it was weird. So the mountains will do that.
Longs, I always think it's funny. It's a long day.
Yeah, it's a
long day.
It's a long day.
There are other 14ers you can do that are way easier. And much better places to start. Although starting with somebody who's experienced is awesome if you could do it. But we also live in the digital age. There are so many resources available to get even the most basic knowledge before you go out.
And by the way, I don't know if it was entirely from the exhaustion or one of the decisions we didn't make was my dad had the stove on in there, and we might have just been breathing a little too much of that gas because I don't know. I don't know how much of it was that and how much was the other. It could have been a little carbon monoxide poisoning. A little half and half maybe. I might have never woken up is what I'm saying. From that sleep. We'll just we don't know.
Gaslit you.
It could have been that I was tired. It could have been that I almost suffocated.
The hypoxia was
we could have been who knows. But
that's awesome.
I think he remembered to poke the hole halfway, through the night or something. But anyway.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, nature, she doesn't care. And we've had my husband's friends tend to all be sort of from either his work or the mountaineering community. And so we have a lot of friends in the mountaineering community. We have unfortunately lost friends in hiking accidents. We have friends that have been hit by lightning. We have friends with traumatic brain injury from getting hit with rocks, even with a helmet on.
I bet.
So nobody has more of an appreciation than we do that you know, it is another form of really challenging yourself. And, you know, thankfully my husband is really smart about it and really studious. You know, he studies the weather, he studies slope angles, like, you know, so, and it's his love and passion. After the accident I had, people ask me, how do you still let him go out and hike? And I was like, well, A, that's not really how our relationship works. We don't let each other do stuff. And B, it's who he is. Like, I don't want him to be a different person. I don't want to change him and take that away from him. We're going to be smarter. We've learned from this. And he'll, you know, not make the same mistake twice. I trust him in that. But I accept that.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. Yeah. Because, you know, sometimes with those things, when something goes, you know, the wrong way, and it, you know, one of the worst things that can happens, it can teach you a lot. And then sometimes that eliminates, like, you know, you just know what you're dealing with now. It's such a more visceral level. It's like, actually the last person who's probably going to have an issue is now, you know, you guys or Brad on these missions, because most people don't even know the consequences. Right. And that's one of the reasons why they would run into those scenarios. Oh my gosh, we'll be out hiking and people will pass us, or, you know, we'll be coming down because we always summit really early because of storms in the afternoon. And we'll be coming down and you see people going up totally unprepared. And I'm floored there isn't more that happens to people. Right. Like, oh my God. Yeah. Sometimes you're just like, people, I mean, and they're not, you know, Colorado has its reputation and stuff, and people come out here and they're like, it's not so much anymore, but when first weed was legalized, you know, people would just come out and they would just kind of going to get ripped and head to the woods and stuff. And I'm just like, I remember I was climbing the Flatirons one day and it's like, all right, we're like parkour dudes, you know, and we, I'm scared, but I'm like focused at least. And, you know, we're free soloing the Flatirons. It's not unheard of, you know, lots of people do it, but then sure enough, one day I was like coming down and, you know, this group of dudes was coming up and I was like, these guys just do not seem with it. No. And sure enough, as we were coming down, you know, one of them is like, just waiting for the stretcher because they fell off. And it's just like, oh my God, it's really easy for you know. I have done 2 of the Flatirons. I've done the first and the third, but I was roped. I'm not a... No, I am not young and male. There was no need to free solo them, although so many people do. I mean, there are a lot of experienced climbers. That's just a like quick, it's like going out for a jog. Yeah. Like, but because it's like, because it looks so approachable, some people will just look at it and just, oh yeah, it looks like, and it's like, no, it's, you better know what you're doing. Yeah. You know?